My student, who's 75 years young, rotates better than golfers in their 20s and has a tour pro level of rotation. And it actually has very little to do with his flexibility and mobility. And it has more to do with the positions he's getting in the golf swing. So you're all going to learn a lot here because there's certain things you need in the golf swing to be able to rotate. And that's the reason of you not having those of why you can't rotate. So let's get straight into an analysis of my student's swing, noting the pieces that you need to be able to rotate in your golf swing. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna get onto camera afterwards and talk about exactly how you can go and do it at home, get these pieces into your golf swing and a drill to rep out to be able to get this great rotation. So let's dive into my student's swing here and see why he rotates so well. So let's get straight into it. As we said, the pieces to be able to rotate are in his golf swing. So let's get to the first one here, and that is a square club face. So we can see him taking the club back into his takeaway position. See how the club face angle is matching his spine angle. So what that means, that club face is square to the arc. So as he continues through his golf swing, that club face is going to continue to be square to the arc, which is going to massively help him to be able to continue to turn. So we'll explain after this exactly why that club face, if it's closed or open, can really affect your rotation. So let's look at the next piece, which is so important, backswing depth with the hands and the arms. So if I draw a line down here with the hands, you can see it has hands are just behind his heels and his left arm is covering his shoulder plane. So this is so important when it comes to rotation in the downswing, because this is what controls your club path. If you've got great depth of your hands and passable amount, so that is anything from ankles or behind of where the hands will be in this sense, or arm, left arm around the shoulder plane, your club is going to fall on path with you just turning nicely in good sequence in a downswing. So many players who, let's say, slice the golf ball when they get more rotation is because they've got bad arm and hand depth. Again, we're going to explain this all more in detail in a minute. So the third piece, so important, club shaft shallowing. So see how that club shaft is shallowing in transition here. So that nice pitching back of the club shaft, as we're going to see in transition. See how it's at that more laid down angle than where it was at the top of the swing. So it's not necessarily getting more into out, more behind him. So in path, so a lot of people will think shallowing means more inside. You can be shallow and be on the outside with your path. It's just the center of mass of the golf club pitching in this direction in comparison to where it was in the top of the backswing there. So all these movements, that good club face keeps the club face square to the arc as we continue to move through. The good backswing depth keeps the club moving on path, and the shallowing enables him to be able to have great turn going through that golf ball. Brilliant. Now the ball will generally go further than this. It's not for my student here because he's using a foam golf ball. So it will go further than that with a normal golf ball, but absolutely brilliant swing here. There's very little that he does here that is purely down to his mobility. Now, of course, he's in absolute brilliant shape for 75, for sure. But rotation and getting good rotation is more about the constant speed of your rotation, as we can see with my student here, constantly turning, no stall out through the golf ball, more than how open you can get. How open, how ultimately rotated Dustin Johnson you look is down to your mobility and athleticism, but your rate of rotation staying constant is what we can all get. We all might look different. He's not tremendously open at impact, as you can see, but he's plenty rotated and his rotation is constant, and that's due to the pieces he has on his golf swing. So let's get on camera here and let's talk about how to get these pieces that you need in your golf swing into your swing. So as we saw there, he has the environment to be able to rotate. If you don't have those key pieces in your golf swing, rotation will become impossible, and even if you do manage to rotate, you'll hit the ball absolutely terribly. So it's something you must need before diving into if your mobility is good enough or not. And then even if you do have the pieces, you need to drill it out, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So let's get straight to those pieces and how to get them into your golf swing. So number one, club face. As we saw there, he has a nice square club face to where the club face angle at shaft parallel to the ground is matching his spine angle. So, and he maintains that square face because that's square to the arc throughout the entirety of his golf swing. Because if that club face is nice and square to the arc, the body can just freely turn going through the golf ball. If the club face gets too open, you'll have to stall and you'll have to flip. If the club face gets too closed, you'll have to stand up to raise the hands to open the face. So it's so important. If you trip up on that one, you're not going to be very good with it. So first and foremost, look at your grip. If you're open or closed, you've got to make sure, is it happening from grip or is it happening from my movement in the takeaway or maybe later on? So I would always recommend for players just to have a standard, normal grip. Even though I personally grip with a weaker grip, I find slightly weaker and standard grips better than strong because it becomes far easier then to be able to have a square club face. So for standard, make sure you're seeing 2 to 2.5 knuckles in that left hand, and with the V from your thumb to the meat of your right hand there, we want that line going up towards kind of like right pec area. So if you move back in what we'll call a standard takeaway, the club face is going to be square. So standard takeaway being having the hands around a hand's distance from your right leg and the club head in line, maybe even slightly outside the hands, again for a standard grip. If you can do that, your club face is going to be square. So if we do a little drill from there, I'm going to want you to get to that position. So shaft parallel to the ground, have your hands nicely, get a fist distance from that right leg, club head around the hands, slightly toed down, and then we stop there and then we swing up and hit the ball. That maintains that square club face unless we do anything else funky from there. And then we move through and then that club face stays nice and square. So that's your drill to go away and do if your club face is not square. You can do this for both, of course, strong or weak grip, because you're just stopping here and making sure that club face is looking good. And then swinging up and swinging through, really, really, really important one to do. And let's say if you're doing that and your club face is still opening or closing, very much so look at your wrist angles. Are you getting too bowed at the top, closing it off too much? Are you getting too cupped with that left wrist, opening it up? A load of different things, which is why there is a link in the description for lessons with myself online on Skillis. We can get to the bottom of that, but very much so get that first piece nicely and get that grip nice. So the second important piece was backswing depth. So depth of the hands and the arms. So really from there, we saw my student with that really nice depth. Now what we would classify as, we said, a nice depth of hands around kind of ankles, heels, maybe even slightly behind that. So that's where it's not going to negatively affect you for your downswing rotation. Because if I have this good depth and now I rotate in the downswing, the club is falling on path really nicely and I can just continue to turn. So for you golfers out there who, let's say, try to get more rotation and straight away you start to slice the golf ball, because you do this. You just lift the arm straight up to the top of the swing with no depth, a massive lack of it, to where these hands will be more on top of really balls of the feet region. So as soon as I turn down the downswing from there, the club's going to fly out in front of me. Because what we've got to remember, downswing rotation or any rotation in the golf swing has an effect on what the hands do. So if I outstretch my arm up to the top there and I rotate, you're going to see how the hands and arms are going to follow where I rotate. Now they're not going to go dead straight out like you're seeing here, because the ball's on the ground. It's going to have a slight outward move. Hands are also going to go down as well though. But if I have a lack of depth, that slight outward move, club's going to get out in front of me. So make sure you've got enough depth. Of course, we don't want too much to where the arms are right back here, because no matter how well you rotate, you're most likely still going to have the club stuck behind you. So we really want to get that good depth. And why we don't see players get good enough depth is two reasons. Again, one is a little bit of takeaway. Those players will be going dead straight out with the hands. They'll be trying to get the hands either going out or dead straight back. And then that just encourages them to lift the arms up. We want the hands to be going slightly in a takeaway, because we're swinging on an arc in a golf swing. We want the hands to work on a mirrored arc. So that means they've got to go slightly in a takeaway. Like I said, a fist distance from that right leg. And then from there, if we're turning ourselves up to the top, the hands and arms are naturally going to have an upward movement in the backswing. But if we're turning, that's getting the hands to go around us. And now we've got good depth. Slight inward takeaway, good hip rotation. So we need that rotation. So many golfers will get the hands going out, no rotation, then the hands just go straight up. You need the rotation to bring them around. So that's where if we grab, let's say, a stick here, put the stick in our belt loops. Again, look at yourself on camera. You've got to know this before you come to the conclusion that your body can't rotate. Get yourself to that first drill there. Shaft parallel to the ground, hands going slightly in. We've got the first component of depth and a square club face. And then what I want you to do with this stick in between your belt loops, I want you to then get the stick gradually going halfway to the golf ball. That rotation is going to bring the hands and arms around more, and that's going to give you the good depth. And of course, this is a good one to where you're feeling like the stick disappears around you. You can get some downswing rotation as well from there. So 1, 2, there we go. So if we can get that, we're going to get the good depth, and then we're going to really nicely be able to have another piece that we need to be able to rotate through that downswing. So guys, even though we're talking about 3 pieces here, and we're going to get to the 3rd one, it is so important to know all the things that affect your rotation in the downswing, which is why there's so many more than I can actually say on this YouTube video, because it'll be way too long. That's why I've got a course called The Ultimate Guide to Rotation in a Downswing. Every single thing that affects your rotation is in there, and depending on what is wrong with your golf swing, there is a plan in that course also to practice for that specific thing with great rotation drills. There is a link in the description for that, and that would be the best way to arm yourself with knowledge and a plan to go about it that'll be tailored to yourself. It's in the description. Ultimate Guide to Rotation and Downswing, a really good one to have. So the 3rd piece, so important, shallowing the shaft. So starting that downswing with the club shaft slightly pitching behind you. Center of mass of the golf club pitching down. So center of mass of the golf club is the balance point in the shaft there. That's what we want to pitch behind us. So if we can do that, shallow that shaft, then of course we just need to turn and that club falls onto the golf ball perfectly. So we need to shallow the shaft, because if that shaft is too steep, gets vertical in the downswing and we continue to turn, we're going to massively chop down across it. We're going to be hitting down to the core of the earth. So that's why what we see with players, when they have that steep shaft, their body will reorganize itself to shallow out the angle of attack. And that might be for quite a lot of players, early extension, because you can see as soon as I stand the body up, club shaft starts to pitch more behind. That will shallow out angle of attack, but it will stall out your rotation. Not going to be good. We might even see players excessively trail side bend. Upper body massively spine tilting away, and you're going to see straight away what happens to the club shaft. It shallows later. So those are shallowing mechanisms reacting to a steep shaft in the early downswing. All will stall out your rotation. So that's why we need this nice shallowing move. And with my student, he did that via having really good external shoulder rotation. So that right elbow going more in front there. Now, this is probably the one area in his golf swing where he has got some really good gifted mobility in. Because for someone his age, again, having that degree of right elbow getting in front, external shoulder rotation is quite rare. That's his shallowing method, but there is plenty of shallowing methods out there to where I would recommend for most people just letting your pivot do it. So that's where we're starting down that downswing, leaving the hands and arms where they are. As soon as I turn down there, the club shaft starts to shallow out. And a great drill to do for that is to get yourself up against a wall, or a net in my case. It'd be great if this is a net, to where you're about a grip's distance with the wall behind you. Get the club, touch the wall, and leave your hands and arms up here whilst you turn the rest of your body. So turn lower body, mid-torso first. You're going to see if I have really nice loose grip tension, leaving the hands and arms where they are, the club's naturally going to start to slide down the wall. I'm not physically trying to slide it. I'm letting my arms be nice and loose, letting the club do the work. Around midway down, the club's going to detach and you turn through. But it gives you that feeling to be able to do this movement. Get those arms relaxing, get that club sliding down. Again, absorb that feeling, bring that feeling into the golf ball, just like you're trying to slide that club down via feeling arms nice, light and loose. Boom. There we go. So that's a really good one to do. Again, it's a very big topic, it's shallowing the golf club. And I have another guide out there for this topic because it's so extensive, and that is the complete guide to shallowing the golf club in the downswing, but also the ultimate guide to rotation has a ton of shallowing stuff in there also. So really important, because it is one of the main big key things in rotation, and being able to rotate nicely in the downswing no matter what your age is. But before we get into the drill here, guys, got to really know that shallowing the golf club, yes, it's very, very important, but you don't have to have this crazy kind of Matthew Wolf-like shallowing movement. Shallowing it a little bit will do the job for you. So don't have to try and get it crazy, just get it a little bit in your swing. Now let's get to the drill to do. So this is the exact drill my student did. So he has the variables in his golf swing, the pieces to be able to rotate, but that won't just make him rotate on its own. He still has to train the movement, where a lot of you will train the movement without knowing that you need to have all these different moves in the golf swing. So this is why it's a long process to be able to turn better in the downswing, but it's something that is so beneficial because it will cause you to hit longer, straighter golf shots as soon as you get the movement in there, which is why my student, as you've probably seen from another video recently with him, can win some big tournaments. And what he did was the preset rotation drill. So a drill I talk about all the time on the channel. I talked about in a video recently with the same student because he had some really good success from this drill. And that is opening up the hips as much as you can, opening up the chest as much as you can. Weight is 90% on the lead leg. Right shoulder is down to the right hip there. Now what we want to do, we want to turn in that backswing now, do a half swing start off with, spring back, spring through. And because I started in that rotation movement, in that impact, my body has a much better capability of getting back to that again. So short-term wise, you're going to notice when you do this, it's the only way you can actually get good rotation and hit the ball really well. But if you practice it enough for a good number of months, you will get it into your golf swing. It will start to gradually creep in. So it happens with absolutely everyone. Happened with myself. I did this drill a ton. Happens with all the students I teach on Skillist. Everyone gets into their golf swing, but everyone notices they hit the ball really quite well when they do this starting off with. So nice half swings and then building it up to fuller swings once you feel more comfortable with it. And then implementing that same feel to your normal swing to try and replicate it. But a very good one just to rep out over and over again. So as you can see from both front on and down the line, as a lot of you in the last video said, could you have a front on video for that? Absolutely, I listened to you, this is where it is. So really good one to be able to turn and unwind, as you can see there. So it's a long process, like I said, but it's one that has massive benefits. So if you want to rotate, absolutely, this is the video for you. Again, there is more in depth on the ultimate guide to rotation in the downswing. Everything on there, even more so than a recent video I made a couple months ago, which is a half an hour long video about the guide to rotation. I still couldn't put all the info in that either because the video would have been too long. So again, link in description, and for Shallow in the Golf Club, and maybe even if you want to fix your over the top, there is a guide in there as well. So if you enjoyed the video, click that like button if you want more golf instruction, just like this. Hit the subscribe button and hit that bell button too to be notified every time I put out a video.